At 11:47 on the coldest night Blackridge Keep had seen in 40 years, Rosalie Hart watched the blood of a dead wolf crawl uphill and spell her family's name. The prisoner had been dead for 3 days. Rosalie knew because she had washed his body, closed his clouded eyes, and helped carry him into the frozen burial chamber beneath the fortress. Yet the dark blood staining the dungeon floor was still warm. It slid between the cracks in the stone as if pulled by invisible fingers, gathering beneath the weak yellow light of her lantern until 2 words appeared at her knees: Moonvale lives. Rosalie stopped breathing. The iron bucket slipped from her hand and struck the floor with a hollow clang. Dirty water rushed around her worn boots, but the message did not dissolve. The blood remained perfectly formed, black against the wet gray stone. From the neighboring cell came the slow rattle of chain. Rosalie turned. The dead wolf was still lying where the guards had left him, a gaunt man with silver cuffs around his wrists and bruises darkening his throat. His chest did not rise. Frost had formed along his eyelashes, but when Rosalie lifted the lantern, his eyes opened. They were no longer brown, they burned silver. "Rosalie Moonvale," he whispered. The voice was barely human. It seemed to come from the walls, the floor, and the ancient mountain beneath the keep. Something powerful shifted inside her. Not fear. Not entirely. Recognition. Seraphine, the wolf Rosalie had kept chained within her soul for 6 years, lifted her great white head. Run. Rosalie's pulse slammed against her ribs. She had not heard Seraphine speak so clearly since the night her family died. The dead prisoner's silver eyes moved toward the ceiling. He remembers. The fortress bells began to ring. Once. Twice. Then 12 thunderous strikes rolled through Blackridge Keep, announcing the arrival of royalty. The dead man's eyes closed. His chains fell silent. The words on the floor broke apart and vanished into the washwater as if they had never existed. Rosalie stood alone in the dungeon, surrounded by stone, darkness, and a truth she had spent 6 years trying to bury. The Alpha King had arrived. By the time Rosalie reached the upper courtyard, the snowstorm had swallowed the moon. Wind tore through the open gates and drove white sheets of snow across the black stone walls. Hundreds of pack members stood in rigid rows beneath the banners of House Crow, their heads lowered as mounted royal guards entered the fortress. At the center of them rode Alpha King Damian Voss. He did not look like the polished kings painted in chapel windows. There was nothing gentle or ceremonial about him. He rode a massive black stallion as if he had crossed a battlefield rather than a mountain road. Snow clung to his tousled black hair. A thin scar ran from his right temple toward the rough stubble along his jaw. Dark leather showed beneath his black royal armor, and his heavy wolf fur cloak moved behind him like a shadow. He was 37, though power made him seem older and danger made him seem timeless. Stories about Damian Voss traveled farther than his armies. It was said he had ended a rebellion without raising his voice, broken 3 rival alphas in a single night, and once walked unarmed into an enemy stronghold because he knew no one inside possessed the courage to strike first. Women at court called him mysterious. Warriors called him merciless. Men who had betrayed him rarely lived long enough to call him anything. Rosalie kept her face lowered. She had made herself difficult to remember. That was how she had survived. Her long, dark auburn hair was hidden beneath a faded servant's scarf. Ash covered the natural warmth of her fair skin. Her loose brown dress concealed the full, soft curves of her body beneath layers of rough wool. People saw a chubby, wolfless servant with a pretty face gone pale from exhaustion. They saw slow hands, lowered eyes, and a woman too timid to cause trouble. They did not see the woman who had memorized every locked passage beneath the keep. They did not see the stolen letters hidden inside the wall behind her narrow bed. They did not see Seraphine, the last Moonvale white wolf, sleeping behind 6 years of discipline and rage. Lady Vivienne Crow paced along the servant line, inspecting them as if choosing which animals should be removed before an important guest arrived. She was elegant in crimson velvet, her dark hair braided with gold, her beauty sharpened by a permanent expression of contempt. When she reached Rosalie, her gaze dropped deliberately over Rosalie's figure. "Pull in your stomach," Vivienne murmured. His Majesty came to inspect missing wolves, not the kitchen's failures. A few servants looked away, embarrassed for Rosalie. Others hid their amusement. Rosalie did not react. Humiliation was safer than attention. Vivienne leaned closer. And try not to breathe too loudly. You already take up enough space. Seraphine growled inside her. Rosalie pressed her fingernails into her palms. Not here. Not now. The royal procession stopped before the main steps. Damian dismounted without assistance. When his boots struck the stone, the courtyard changed. It was not merely silence. It was pressure. His alpha presence rolled outward, cold and controlled, pressing against every wolf in the courtyard. Knees bent, heads lowered further. Rosalie felt the command reach for her spine. Seraphine rose against it. For one terrifying second, Rosalie remained perfectly upright while stronger wolves bowed. She immediately let one knee weaken and lowered herself with the servants. Damian's steel-gray eyes moved across the courtyard. They stopped on her. Rosalie felt it before she dared to look, the unmistakable attention of a predator who had noticed movement in tall grass. "Welcome to Blackridge, Your Majesty." Alpha Garrett Crow hurried down the steps, smiling too broadly. "We are honored by your presence." Damian did not return the smile. 12 wolves have disappeared from your territory in 8 weeks. Garrick's face tightened. "Runaways, most likely. Omegas are easily frightened during hard winters. 3 were trained soldiers. A regrettable coïncidence." Damian removed one leather glove finger by finger. His movements were unhurried, but every person watching seemed to hold their breath. "I do not travel 400 miles through a blizzard to investigate coincidences." His gaze passed over Garrick and returned to the servant line, to Rosalie. Seraphine paced in her mind. "He smells familiar." Rosalie's stomach tightened. That was impossible. She had been 17 the last time she saw anyone from the royal house, and that night had ended in fire, screams, and her mother's blood soaking through the floorboards above her hiding place. Damian began walking toward the servants. His guards remained behind him. He did not need their protection to make people afraid. Rosalie kept her eyes on the snow gathering around her boots. His footsteps grew closer. One step, another, then silence. A pair of black, weathered boots stopped directly in front of her. "What is your name?" Damian asked. His voice was low, roughened by cold and command. Rosalie swallowed. "Rosalie Hart, Your Majesty." He said nothing. She could feel him studying the top of her bowed head. "Look at me." The order carried alpha power. Around them, several servants flinched. Rosalie slowly raised her face. For the first time, her gray-green eyes met Damian Voss's steel-gray stare. The world broke open. Heat shot through her wrist before he even touched her. A violent flash consumed the courtyard. For a heartbeat, Rosalie was no longer kneeling in snow. She was beneath a burning house. Smoke clawed at her lungs. Men shouted above her. Her mother screamed once, then fell silent. Through a gap in the shattered floor, a boy with blood on his face reached toward her. He wore the black wolf crest of House Voss. His hand was scarred. "Take my hand," he begged. "I can get you out." A man dragged him backward before Rosalie could reach him. The vision vanished. Rosalie gasped. Damian's bare hand was locked around her wrist. He looked just as shaken as she felt. For an instant, the ruthless mask left his face. Confusion entered his eyes, followed by something darker, pain without memory. Inside Rosalie, Seraphine surged so violently that the mental chains around her groaned. "Mate." The word filled Rosalie with horror. Damian released her as though burned. His jaw hardened. His expression became unreadable again, but his thumb brushed the crescent-shaped scar along his palm, the same scar the boy had carried in Rosalie's vision. "Where were you born?" he asked. Rosalie forced her voice to remain small. "I do not know, Your Majesty." It was the first lie she had told him. His eyes narrowed as if he heard it. Vivienne stepped forward quickly. She was abandoned as a child. A useless little stray. She has no wolf and no family worth naming. Damian looked at Vivienne with such quiet contempt that her smile faltered. "I did not ask you." The courtyard became painfully still. Vivienne lowered her head. "Forgive me, Your Majesty." Damian returned his attention to Rosalie. "You work in the lower levels?" "Yes." "Then you will show me the prisoner cells after sundown." Garrick's face paled. "Your Majesty, there is nothing below but storage chambers." Damian did not look at him. "Then my visit will be brief." He turned and walked toward the keep. Only when he was several steps away did Rosalie realize her entire body was trembling, not because the Alpha King had discovered her, because some part of him had known her. That evening, Blackridge Keep became a fortress within a fortress. Royal guards secured every gate, searched the stables, and posted men outside the archives. No servant was permitted to leave. No message was allowed beyond the walls. Rosalie spent the afternoon carrying wine, feeding fires, and pretending she could not feel Damian's attention following her through every room. At dusk, Vivienne cornered her inside the linen passage. "You enjoyed that," she said. Rosalie tightened her hold on the folded sheets. "Enjoyed what, my lady?" "Having him look at you." Rosalie almost laughed. There had been no pleasure in Damian's stare. It had felt like standing before a locked door that remembered the shape of her hand. Vivienne stepped closer. "A king may glance at a servant, but he does not choose one. Especially not a soft, wolfless woman who smells of smoke and dishwater." Rosalie met her eyes. For 6 years, she had accepted cruelty with silence. Tonight, something in her had shifted. "Then you have nothing to fear." Vivienne's face changed. It was only a flicker, but Rosalie saw it uncertainty. Before either woman could speak again, royal boots sounded in the corridor. Damian appeared at the far end with Commander Elias Kane beside him. Elias was broad, gray-eyed, and carried the patient weariness of a man who had spent years cleaning up after powerful people. Damian looked from Vivienne to Rosalie. "Is there a problem?" Vivienne smiled instantly. "None at all." She walked away, but not before giving Rosalie a look sharp enough to promise punishment. Damian waited until she disappeared. Then he looked at the folded sheets in Rosalie's arms. "Do servants usually carry clean linen toward the sealed archives?" Rosalie glanced at the door beside her. A mistake. His mouth almost curved, though no warmth reached his eyes. "You can read the old royal script," he said. It was not a question. Rosalie's pulse quickened. "I recognize a few symbols. Most court scholars cannot recognize a few symbols. Servants learn many things while powerful people forget we are in the room." Commander Elias raised one eyebrow. Damian stared at her for a long moment. "You are not what they believe you are." Rosalie held his gaze despite every instinct warning her to retreat. "Neither are you." Pain flashed behind his eyes. Then the fortress doors opened, and a horn sounded from the courtyard. A new procession entered Blackridge beneath banners of silver and black. At its center rode Chancellor Silas Vale. Rosalie had not seen him since the night Moonvale Manor burned, but age had not changed the calm precision of his face. His silver hair was neatly tied. His dark coat was untouched by snow. He looked less like a murderer than a respected statesman arriving for a council meeting. Behind him, 4 guards carried a tall object wrapped in chains and black cloth. Seraphine recoiled inside Rosalie. "Moon mirror." Silas stepped into the great hall and bowed to Damian. "Your Majesty, the royal seers were correct. An ancient bloodline is hiding within this fortress." His eyes moved across the room. They paused on Rosalie for less than a second. That was enough. "By sunrise," Silas continued, "every man and woman inside Blackridge will stand before the moon mirror. Any wolf concealed by magic will be forced into the light." The doors slammed shut behind him. Rosalie felt the magical seals lock across the fortress walls. No path out, no place left to hide. Inside her, Seraphine whispered the words Rosalie had feared for 6 years. "The king was there when they killed us." And for the first time since the night her family died, Rosalie wondered whether surviving until morning would be more dangerous than dying before it arrived. The moon mirror stood beneath black cloth in the center of Blackridge's great hall, but Rosalie could feel it through 3 stone walls. Its magic pulsed like a second heartbeat inside the fortress. Every pulse made Seraphine pace harder behind the barriers in Rosalie's mind. By midnight, no one in Blackridge was sleeping. Royal guards searched bedrooms, storage rooms, kitchens, and hidden passages. Servants whispered prayers over cold bowls of stew. Warriors sharpened weapons they knew would be useless against royal magic. Outside, the storm battered the towers so violently that the ancient windows trembled in their frames. Rosalie sat on the edge of her narrow bed in the servants' quarters, fully dressed, staring at the loose stone behind which she had hidden 6 years of stolen evidence. Letters, shipping records, names of missing Omegas. Lists of wolfless servants transferred from northern packs to properties controlled by the royal chancellor. She had spent years collecting fragments without knowing how they connected. Tonight, for the first time, she understood that the disappearances had not begun at Blackridge. The fortress was only one door in a much larger prison. Rosalie removed the stone and pulled out the oilskin bundle. If she could reach the old drainage tunnel beneath the west tower, she might escape before sunrise. The passage had been sealed decades ago, but Rosalie had loosened the iron grate one rusted pin at a time. She had planned for this moment every night since arriving at Blackridge. She had never planned for Damian Voss. The memory of his hand around her wrist returned with painful clarity. The burning manor, the bloodied boy reaching for her, the guardian scar across his palm. "Mate," Seraphine repeated. Rosalie closed her eyes. "He is a Voss. He tried to save us. He brought the man who killed our family into this keep. He did not know. You cannot know that. Neither can you." Rosalie pressed both hands over her face. The bond inside her was not romantic. It was violent, instinctive, and deeply unwelcome. It pulled her toward a man she had every reason to fear. Each time she remembered his steel-gray eyes. Something warm and dangerous unfurled beneath her ribs. She hated it. She hated that her wolf had recognized him before her mind could judge him. She hated that a part of her had felt safer when he stepped between her and Vivienne. Most of all, she hated that safety offered by a powerful man could feel so much like temptation. A soft knock sounded at the door. Rosalie froze. No servant knocked at another servant's door after midnight. She reached beneath her mattress and closed her hand around a thin kitchen knife. "Rosalie Hart," Damian said from the corridor. "Open the door." Seraphine surged forward. Rosalie quickly returned the oilskin bundle to the wall, replaced the stone, and crossed the room. When she opened the door, Damian stood alone. He had removed his armor. A fitted black shirt stretched across his broad chest beneath an open leather coat. The scar along his jaw looked darker in the candlelight, and his hair was still slightly damp from melted snow. Without the royal cloak and ceremonial steel, he looked less like a king and more like a dangerous man who had learned to survive by expecting betrayal. His gaze dropped briefly to the knife in Rosalie's hand. "If I intended to harm you," he said, "that would not stop me." Rosalie kept her grip on it. "Then perhaps it is not for you." A flicker of approval moved through his expression. "May I come in?" The question surprised her. Kings did not ask permission to enter servant rooms. Rosalie stepped aside, but she did not lower the knife. Damian entered and immediately noticed everything. The worn blanket, the cracked wash basin, the window that would not fully close, and the thin layer of ice forming along the interior wall. His jaw tightened. "How long have you lived here?" 6 years. "And Alpha Crow considers this suitable?" "Alpha Crow does not consider servants." Damian looked toward the wall behind her bed. His attention lingered there for half a second too long. Rosalie moved subtly into his line of sight. "What do you want?" "The truth. Kings usually prefer obedience. I have enough obedient liars." His voice was quiet, but something bitter moved beneath it. Damian reached into his coat and placed a folded piece of parchment on her small table. Rosalie recognized it immediately. It was one of the transport records from the underground archive. 12 names had been crossed out in black ink. The same 12 wolves who had disappeared from Blackridge. "You knew about this," he said. Rosalie did not answer. "You were in the archive before my arrival. You knew where the lower cells were. And when Chancellor Vale mentioned an ancient bloodline, you looked at him like a woman seeing a ghost. I look at most powerful men that way. Not me." Rosalie almost smiled despite herself. "You think very highly of yourself. I think you are afraid of Silas Vale. I think you know why wolves are disappearing, and I think whatever you are hiding is connected to the memory I saw when I touched you." The room seemed to shrink. Rosalie tightened her fingers around the knife. "What did you see?" "Silver eyes, fire, a child beneath a floor." Her heartbeat stumbled. "Nothing else?" Damian's face hardened with frustration. "There is a wall in my mind. When I try to remember, I feel something pushing back." "Convenient." His steel-gray eyes sharpened. "You believe I am lying. I believe men with crowns survive by deciding which truths matter." Damian stepped closer. Rosalie refused to retreat, though his presence filled the small room. Up close, she could see the faint shadow of exhaustion beneath his eyes. She could smell leather, cold air, and something darker beneath it, cedar smoke and wild earth. Ragnar, his black wolf pressed against the edge of Damian's control, answering Seraphine. The bond between them tightened. Damian's gaze dropped briefly to Rosalie's mouth before returning to her eyes. Ask me something only the man from your memory would know. Rosalie's voice became quieter. Did Moonvale Manor burn from the east wing or the west? Pain struck him so suddenly that he gripped the table. A fractured image crossed his face. West, he whispered. The fire began beneath the west tower. Rosalie went cold. That detail had never appeared in official records. She pointed the knife at his chest. Damian did not move. You were there. Yes. You told me you had never heard of Moonvale. I had not. That is impossible. I remember the fire now, but not how I arrived there. I remember a woman pressing a burning hand against my ribs. His fingers moved toward his left side. I remember trying to reach someone beneath the floor. Then I remember waking 3 days later in the capital with my father telling me rebels had attacked the royal guard. Rosalie stared at him. My mother was not a rebel. I did not say she was. Your father did. Something dark passed over Damian's expression. My father said many things that became less convincing after his death. For the first time, Rosalie heard something in his voice beyond authority. Shame. Not guilt for a crime he remembered committing, but shame for having inherited a kingdom without questioning what had paid for it. Damian slowly lifted his shirt enough to reveal the scar over his ribs. Rosalie's breath caught. A crescent-shaped mark curved across his skin, silver at the edges despite the years. It was not an ordinary scar. The design matched the seal once carved above the Moonvale sanctuary. My mother marked you, Rosalie said. The words escaped before she could stop them. Damian's gaze locked onto hers. Then tell me why. Rosalie looked away. Because my mother trusted you. Because she believed you could protect me. Because your bloodline killed her anyway. I do not know. The lie settled heavily between them. Damian lowered his shirt. My wolf recognized you. Rosalie's eyes snapped back to his. He did not soften the confession or dress it in courtly language. He called you mate. The word hung between them like a drawn blade. Seraphine pressed forward with a low, aching sound. Rosalie forced herself to remain still. And what did you tell him? That instinct is not evidence. She had not expected that answer. Damian stepped closer until only a narrow space remained between them. A bond does not make you innocent, he said. It does not make me trustworthy. It only means our wolves know something we do not. Rosalie searched his face for manipulation. She found control, suspicion, and desire he was not trying hard enough to hide. But she also found caution. He was not claiming her. He was not demanding submission. For a dangerous man accustomed to obedience, restraint seemed to cost him something. Then what happens at sunrise? Rosalie asked. I determine what the moon mirror is designed to do. And if I refuse the test, you will confirm Silas's suspicion. That was not my question. Damian's jaw flexed. If you refuse publicly, ancient law allows the chancellor to declare you a threat to the crown. And will the Alpha King defend me? Silence. It lasted only a second, but Rosalie felt it like a knife. Damian looked toward the frost-covered window. I will not promise what I may be unable to deliver without starting a civil war inside this fortress. A cold laugh escaped her. There it is. What? The crown. Rosalie stepped away from him. You came here asking for truth, but when truth threatens your authority, suddenly everything becomes complicated. You think I should ignite a rebellion for a woman who has lied about her name, her history, and whatever power she is hiding? No. I think you should stop pretending this is about whether I deserve protection. Her eyes burned. It is about whether justice is still justice when it becomes inconvenient. Damian absorbed the blow without looking away. Then he nodded once. You are right. Rosalie had been prepared for anger, not agreement. He reached for the parchment on the table. At dawn, stand near the western pillar. Commander Elias will be positioned behind the royal guard. If the ritual becomes dangerous, he will intervene. You still intend to allow it? I intend to learn what Silas wants badly enough to bring a forbidden artifact through a blizzard. And if the price of that knowledge is my life, Damian's eyes turned cold, but not toward her. Then Silas will not survive long enough to use it. The threat should have reassured her. It did not. Dead men could not return stolen lives. Damian moved toward the door, then stopped. Do not try the drainage tunnel beneath the West Tower. Rosalie's blood chilled. He looked back at her. The royal seal froze it shut 2 hours ago. You knew. I know every exit from a fortress before I sleep inside it. His gaze shifted toward the wall behind her bed. And I know when someone has hidden documents behind loose stone. Rosalie raised the knife again. Damian opened the door. If I wanted them, he said, I would already have them. Then he left. Rosalie stood motionless until his footsteps disappeared. Seraphine settled uneasily within her. He could have exposed us. He still may, but he did not. Not yet. At dawn, the entire population of Blackridge Keep gathered in the great hall. Snowlight filtered through the high windows, turning the stone walls pale blue. Torches burned in iron brackets, but their warmth could not touch the fear spreading through the crowd. The moon mirror stood upright on a silver base at the center of the hall. It was taller than a man, and framed in black metal shaped like intertwined wolves. Its surface did not reflect the room. Instead, darkness moved behind the glass like deep water beneath moonlight. Chancellor Silas stood beside it in immaculate black robes. Damian occupied the raised platform above the hall. He wore his armor again, and every trace of the man who had stood inside Rosalie's room had vanished behind the face of the Alpha King. Commander Elias waited near the western pillar, exactly where Damian had promised. Rosalie took her place among the servants. Vivienne stood near her father, dressed in crimson and silver. When her gaze found Rosalie, satisfaction brightened her face. One by one, pack members were called forward. They placed a hand against the mirror. A faint, wolf-shaped shadow appeared behind each reflection, revealing rank and bloodline. Most tests lasted seconds. Then a young kitchen servant named Mara touched the glass. Black veins spread across the mirror. Mara screamed. The moon mirror pulled something from her body, not a hidden wolf, but a glowing strand of magic that tore from her chest. She collapsed. Rosalie moved before she could stop herself. She pushed through the line and caught Mara before the girl's head struck the floor. The room erupted in whispers. Rosalie pressed her fingers to Mara's throat. A pulse remained, weak and uneven. "This is not a test," Rosalie said. Her voice carried farther than she intended. Silas looked at her with mild interest. And what would a wolfless servant know of royal artifacts? Rosalie felt every eye turn toward her. She lowered her gaze. "Only that she is dying." Silas gestured to 2 guards. "Remove her." Damian rose from his chair. "Stop." The guards froze. He descended from the platform and crouched beside Mara. His fingers touched the black veins spreading along her wrist. "What did the mirror take from her?" he asked. Silas remained calm. "Residual concealment magic. Someone has been masking members of this pack." "She is 17, Rosalie said. Vivienne's mouth curved. "Still rushing to protect the weak, Rosalie? Perhaps you recognize whatever she is hiding." Rosalie looked at her. Vivienne's confidence was too perfect. She had been waiting for this moment. Silas turned toward the crowd. "Search the servants' room." Rosalie's stomach dropped. Royal guards left the hall. Damian looked at Silas. "On whose authority?" "On the authority granted to the chancellor during investigations of treasonous bloodlines. My authority supersedes yours." "Of course," Silas smiled politely. "Unless your majesty has a personal reason to prevent the search." The implication spread through the nobles like smoke. Damian's face revealed nothing. Minutes later, guards returned carrying Rosalie's oilskin bundle, her stolen records, and something else, a ritual knife stained with black blood. Rosalie stared at it. She had never seen the weapon before. Vivienne stepped forward, one hand over her mouth in carefully performed shock. "That is the blade found beside the first missing wolf." A murmur rose through the hall. Alpha Garrick looked at Rosalie with theatrical horror. "You brought a murderer into my household." "You brought me here 6 years ago," Rosalie said. His expression flickered. Silas unfolded one of the documents. Moonveil script. The hall fell silent. Rosalie's disguise began collapsing one piece at a time. Silas looked toward Damian. "Your Majesty, this woman has hidden forbidden records, stolen royal documents, and kept a murder weapon in her room. She also resisted the moon mirror before her name was called." "I caught a dying girl," Rosalie said. "You interfered with royal law. Your law nearly killed her." Silas's smile did not change. Then perhaps you should demonstrate that you have nothing to hide. Guards moved toward Rosalie. Damian's voice stopped them. No chains. Silas turned. She may possess dangerous magic. She has not attacked anyone. Yet. Rosalie looked at Damian. He held her gaze. There was warning in his eyes. And regret. But he did not stop the ceremony. The guards escorted Rosalie to the center of the hall. She passed the western pillar. Commander Elias's hand rested near his sword. It was not enough. At the moon mirror, Rosalie saw no reflection, only darkness. Silas leaned toward her. I wondered how long you would remain hidden. His voice was too quiet for anyone else to hear. Rosalie's pulse thundered. You knew. I knew a child escaped Moonvale. I simply did not know where she had learned to make herself so small. Hatred burned through her fear. You murdered my family. I preserved the kingdom. You sold their blood. His eyes cooled. Power without control becomes catastrophe. Silas stepped back and addressed the hall. Place your hand against the glass. Rosalie did not move. Damian stood several yards away. Rosalie, he said, not an alpha command. A plea disguised as one. She looked at him. Did you know what this mirror would do to Mara? No. Do you know what it will do to me? His silence answered. Silas raised a small silver chalice. Liquid inside it smoked purple. Wolfsbane. Damian's expression changed. That was not part of the test. Silas did not look at him. The subject has concealed herself through advanced magic. The mirror requires a catalyst. The dose is lethal. To a normal wolf, perhaps. The hall stirred. Silas had revealed too much. Damian stepped forward. Put it down. Several nobles immediately rose. Duke Renwick, one of Silas's allies, spoke from the front row. Your Majesty, the law is clear. Refusal to complete the test is admission of treason. Damian's aura surged. Torches flickered. You are close to forgetting whom you address. Renwick lowered his head, but his words had already done their work. Every noble watched Damian. If he stopped the ritual now, they would say the king had been compromised by an unknown servant. If he allowed it, Rosalie might die. She saw the calculation in his face, just as she had seen it in powerful men her entire life. Not cruelty, not hatred, something more familiar and, in that moment, more painful. Hesitation. Rosalie's chest tightened. You told me to judge you by what you did next, she said. Damian's eyes met hers. Silas nodded to the guards. They seized Rosalie's arms. Commander Elias drew his sword. Royal soldiers immediately moved between him and the center of the hall. The fortress stood one breath away from civil war. Damian looked at hundreds of armed wolves, then at Rosalie. Proceed with the mirror, he said. The words broke something inside her. But na Wolfsbane. Silas Smele. The mirror has already begun. Black chains erupted from the base of the artifact and wrapped around Rosalie's wrists. She cried out as silver burned through her skin. Damian lunged forward, but the mirror threw a wall of energy between them. Silas pressed the smoking chalice to Rosalie's mouth. She turned away. A guard grabbed her jaw. Rosalie searched the room for anyone who might help. Vivienne watched with satisfaction. Garrick looked afraid. The nobles looked fascinated. Damian struck the magical barrier with his sword. Once. Twice, sending cracks of white light through the air. Silas, stop this. The chancellor poured the poison down Rosalie's throat. Pain erased the world. It was not heat. It was annihilation. Silver spread through her blood like molten wire, cutting through every vein, searching for the power she had buried. Rosalie fell against the chains. Her scream echoed through the hall. Inside her, Seraphine threw herself against the barriers. Let me out. No. We are dying. Better me than all of them finding you. They have already found us. The moon mirror darkened. Images appeared across its surface. Fire. Moanfell Manor. Rosalie was 17 again, trapped beneath the floor while soldiers moved above her. The memory expanded beyond the mirror, filling the great hall. Everyone saw it. A younger Silas stood in the burning courtyard. Find the white wolf child, he ordered. The mother is no longer useful. Masked soldiers dragged Rosalie's wounded mother across the snow. Then a 12-year-old boy appeared. Damian. He shoved past a guard and ran into the burning house. I heard someone beneath the floor. King Aldrich Voss seized his son by the shoulder. You heard nothing. There is a girl in there. Aldrich struck him. Damian fell, then rose again. He ran back toward the house. Silas caught him from behind and pressed 2 fingers to the boy's temple. Black magic spread over Damian's face. "Forget the girl," Silas whispered. "Forget the fire. Forget what your father purchased tonight." The adult Damian staggered as the stolen memory returned to him. His sword fell from his hand. Rosalie's mother broke free long enough to reach the boy. She pressed her bloodied palm against his ribs, leaving the crescent guardian mark. "Find her when the crown no longer owns you." A soldier drove a silver blade into her back. Rosalie screamed, not from the poison, from grief preserved too long. The sound changed as it left her. Her quiet human voice became something vast and ancient. "You did not forget me," she said, staring at Damian through the fractured barrier. "They made you forget." The words struck the room like thunder. Silver light exploded from Rosalie's body. Every hidden oath inside the hall broke at once. Nobles dropped to their knees, clutching their throats. Alpha Garrick began shouting names of servants he had sold. A royal guard confessed to transporting prisoners beneath the capital. Vivienne gasped and tried to cover her mouth, but truth forced itself out. "I planted the knife. I planted the seal. Chancellor Vale promised me the crown." Chaos consumed the hall. Silas stepped back from the mirror, no longer smiling. Rosalie's bones began to change. The chain snapped. Her torn servant dress disappeared beneath a storm of white light. Her body expanded, reshaped, and rose until the woman everyone had dismissed was gone. In her place stood a white wolf larger than Damian's warhorse. Seraphine's luminous fur filled the great hall with moonlight. Her silver eyes burned with ancient fury. Blood from the broken chains stained the white fur around her paws, then vanished as her body healed. The pressure of her aura swept outward. Warriors collapsed. Nobles bowed against their will. Alpha Garrick struck the floor face first. Even Damian's royal guard dropped to one knee. Only Damian remained standing. Not because Seraphine lacked the power to force him down, because she felt him resisting the instinct to dominate her. Ragnar roared inside him. "Mate." Damian reached slowly for his sword. Seraphine bared her fangs. Then he removed the weapon from his belt and placed it on the floor. Silas pointed toward her. "Kill the beast." No one moved. Damian removed his crown next. The black metal struck the stone between them. He stepped in front of Seraphine, placing his own body between her and every weapon in the hall. "Anyone who raises a blade against her," he said, his voice low and deadly, "raises it against me." Silas's face hardened. "She is the last Moonveil. Her bloodline nearly destroyed this kingdom." "No," Damian said. "Your lies nearly did." He looked at Seraphine. For the first time, the Alpha King appeared to understand that his authority meant nothing to her. "I chose the law before I chose the truth," he said. "That was my failure." Seraphine's growl deepened. Damian did not step back. "I will not ask you to forgive me. I will not ask you to trust the bond, but I will not let them use you again." He lowered himself to one knee, not forced by her power, not commanded by ancient blood. He knelt by choice. The great hall went silent. Rosalie watched him through Seraphine's eyes and felt fury, grief, attraction, and betrayal tearing through her at once. This was the boy who had tried to save her. This was the king who had hesitated. This was her mate, and she did not know which truth mattered most. Damian reached toward the broken silver chain at her feet. Before his fingers touched it, the moon mirror flashed black. Silas slammed his hand against the frame. The artifact absorbed the silver light around Seraphine and sent a shockwave through the fortress. Massive iron doors crashed shut. Runes ignited across the walls. The ground beneath them began to shake. A deep, mechanical sound rose from below the keep, followed by dozens of animal cries. Trapdoors opened along the edges of the hall. The missing wolves climbed out of the darkness. Some were thin and bleeding. Others wore silver collars. Every one of them had black eyes. They moved without fear, pain, or recognition. Enslaved. Silas looked at Rosalie with cold triumph. "You believed the mirror was meant to expose you." He spread his arms as the fortress sealed around them. "It was built to awaken you." The enslaved wolves surrounded Damian and Seraphine. One crouched low, its black eyes fixed on the king's throat. Before Rosalie could decide whether Damian deserved her trust, the wolf lunged. If the man destined to be your mate had hesitated while your enemies tortured you, even if his memories had been stolen, would you ever trust him again? Should Rosalie forgive Damian, force him to prove himself, or walk away from him forever? The enslaved wolf crossed the hall in a blur of black fur and snapping teeth. Damian turned too late. Seraphine struck first. She slammed her shoulder into the attacking wolf and drove him sideways across the stone floor. His silver collar sparked on impact, sending a violent current through both animals. Seraphine staggered, but the smaller wolf rose immediately, his broken front leg twisting back into place under the command of whatever magic controlled him. He did not recognize pain. He did not recognize fear. He did not recognize the woman standing inside the white wolf before him. More wolves climbed from the open trapdoors. Some had once been soldiers. Others were servants, Rosalie remembered from the kitchens, stables, and laundry rooms. Their bodies were thin from starvation, their fur patchy where silver restraints had burned the skin beneath it. Black magic pulsed through their eyes in perfect rhythm with the moon mirror. "Do not kill them," Damian shouted. His soldiers hesitated as the first wave attacked. That hesitation nearly cost Commander Elias his throat. He raised his sword sideways just as a gray wolf leaped for him, catching its jaws against the flat of the blade. Instead of driving the weapon forward, he twisted, threw the wolf over his shoulder, and pinned it beneath his boot. "Then someone tell them not to kill us," Elias growled. Silas stood behind the mirror, untouched by the chaos. "They no longer hear you." Seraphine did. Rosalie could feel the collars speaking beneath the noise of the battle. Each silver band carried the same command through the wolf's blood. "Protect the throne. Obey the crown. Destroy the white wolf." The final command struck Seraphine harder than the others. The enslaved wolves turned toward her at once. Damian stepped beside her and retrieved his sword from the floor. "Can you break it?" Rosalie tried to answer, but Seraphine's body had no human voice. Only a deep growl emerged. Damian watched her silver eyes. Then, somehow, he understood. Not while the mirror controls the collars. Seraphine lowered her head once. The connection between them pulsed painfully. The mate bond carried no complete thoughts, but it transmitted urgency, fear, and the direction of her attention. Damian followed her gaze to the black runes blazing around the mirror's frame. Silas saw the realization. "Protect it," he commanded. The enslaved wolves formed a living wall. Damian looked toward Elias. "Get the servants out. The doors are sealed. Then break the walls." Elias glanced at the thick stones surrounding them. "Any particular wall, Your Majesty?" "The one that gives way first." Despite the blood, screams, and terror, Elias's mouth twitched. Finally, a clear royal order. He rallied the royal soldiers toward the eastern side of the hall. They turned shields outward, creating a corridor for servants and unarmed pack members. Alpha Garrick crawled toward them, still confessing pieces of his crimes whenever the White Wolf's truth magic touched him. "I sold 7, he gasped. "Only 7. Silas said they were useless." Rosalie's fury surged. Seraphine turned toward him. Damian moved into her path, not to protect Garrick, to stop her from making a choice she might later regret. "He will answer publicly," Damian said. "Every family will hear what he did." Seraphine's lips pulled back. Garrick deserved no mercy. Damian seemed to hear the thought through the bond. "Justice," he said quietly. "Not the relief of one quick death." Behind him, a black wolf lunged. Rosalie shifted her weight, but Damian spun and drove the hilt of his sword into the animal's skull. The wolf collapsed without a fatal wound. Then another attack, and another. Damian fought with the brutal precision of a man who had survived more battles than he spoke about. There was nothing elegant in it. He used his shoulders, knees, boots, and the heavy guard of his sword. He moved like a king raised among soldiers and a predator trained never to waste strength. Yet every strike was controlled. He refused to kill the wolves trying to tear him apart. Rosalie had expected him to protect what belonged to him. She had not expected him to protect people who had become weapons against him. Seraphine drove through the advancing pack, using her greater size to throw wolves aside, without closing her jaws around their throats. Each silver collar burned her fur when she touched it. White light flashed through the hall, revealing frightened human faces trapped behind the animals' black eyes. They were still inside. They were watching everything their bodies were forced to do. Rosalie reached for them with her mind. No answer came. Her human voice had shattered magical oaths before. In wolf form, she possessed strength, speed, and dominance, but not the power carried in spoken truth. She had to shift back. Seraphine resisted. The poison was still in Rosalie's blood. Returning to human form would leave her weakened, exposed, and nearly naked in a hall filled with enemies. But staying as the White Wolf would eventually force her to kill the people she was trying to save. Rosalie made the choice. Silver light folded around Seraphine's body. Damian saw it and moved immediately. He threw his fur cloak across the space before the transformation finished. Rosalie emerged on her knees beneath it, gasping as bones and muscles returned to human shape. The hall spun around her. Damian crouched beside her, one arm around her waist to keep her from falling. "Can you stand?" Rosalie tried. Her legs buckled. Damian tightened his hold. "I can carry you." "No." His jaw hardened. "This is not the moment for pride." "It is not pride." She forced herself upright, clutching his cloak around her soft, trembling body. "For 6 years, men decided whether I stood, knelt, worked, ate, or slept. You do not get to decide for me because your intentions are better." The words hit him. Damian released her at once. He remained close enough to catch her, but he did not touch her again. "Then tell me what you need." Rosalie looked at the enslaved wolves. "Time." Damian turned toward the advancing pack and raised his sword. "You have it." He stepped in front of her. Rosalie's anger flared. "Beside me." He looked back. "Not in front of me," she said. "You do not shield me from a battle that belongs to both of us." For a heartbeat, the Alpha King's instincts fought the command. Then he moved to her side. Together, they faced the wolves. Rosalie drew a breath. Her throat burned from wolfsbane, smoke, and 6 years of deliberate silence. She had spoken in short sentences when necessary, always keeping her true power restrained. Now she opened the place inside her where the Moonveil voice lived. "Your names were not taken from you." The words moved through the hall with a silver resonance. Several wolves stumbled. The mirror darkened. Silas's expression tightened. Rosalie continued. "You were not born to obey pain. You were not created to serve a throne. Remember the first voice that ever called you home." A brown wolf near the front shook violently. Blackness flickered out of one eye. "Mara," Rosalie whispered, recognizing the kitchen servant's older brother. "Your sister is alive. She is waiting behind the eastern wall." The wolf screamed. It was not an animal sound. It was the cry of a man trapped inside his own body. The silver collar cracked. Black magic spilled from his mouth like smoke. He collapsed, shifting back into human form on the stone floor. The other enslaved wolves hesitated. Hope moved through the hall. Silas lifted one hand. The moon mirror flashed. Every remaining collar tightened. The wolves howled as silver cut into their necks. "You cannot free them all," Silas said. "Every name costs you strength. Every truth draws from your life." Rosalie could feel that already. Her knees weakened. Blood filled her mouth. Damian looked at her sharply. "Stop." She ignored him. Silas smiled. "There. The king reveals himself. He would rather preserve what belongs to him than let you spend yourself saving strangers." "She does not belong to me," Damian said. The certainty in his voice silenced even Rosalie. Silas's gaze shifted between them. "Not yet." Damian's wolf surged beneath his skin. His eyes flashed amber, but he kept his voice cold. "Never, unless she chooses it." For the first time, Silas looked genuinely displeased. Rosalie drew another breath. She spoke 3 more names. 3 collars broke. 3 wolves fell free, but the effort dragged darkness across her vision. Damian caught her elbow when she swayed. This time she did not pull away immediately. His hand was steady and warm. "You cannot save them one at a time," he said. "I know. Then we destroy the source. The mirror is only a gate." Damian followed her gaze to the runes in the floor. They extended beneath the stone, all leading downward. "Something under the keep is feeding it," Rosalie said. "Something connected to the royal bloodline." Silas began backing toward a narrow door behind the mirror. Damian noticed. "So that is where we go." Rosalie looked at the wolves between them and the door. "They will tear us apart before we reach it." A woman's voice cut through the chaos. "There is another way." Vivienne stood near the western wall, her crimson dress torn at the shoulder and blood running down one side of her face. For the first time since Rosalie had known her, she looked frightened rather than cruel. Damian pointed his sword at her. "Give me one reason to hear you, because Silas intends to kill everyone in this keep." Silas paused. Vivienne saw it. Her fear turned to certainty. "You promised my father control of the northern territories," she said. "You promised me the crown. I promised you a place in the new order. You sealed the fortress with my entire pack inside. Sacrifice is the foundation of order." Garrick stared at him in disbelief. "You said the servants were the only ones being taken." Silas regarded him with open disgust. "And that is why men like you should never be trusted with the truth." Vivienne's face went white. Rosalie felt no sympathy for her. Vivienne had planted evidence, helped condemn innocent people, and watched the ritual with satisfaction. But betrayal had finally shown her the shape of the man she served. "There is a passage behind the old chapel," Vivienne said. "It reaches the chamber beneath the keep. My family used it during sieges." "Why should we believe you?" Elias called from across the hall. "You should not," Vivienne replied. "But the passage exists whether you believe me or not." Rosalie studied her. "Why help us now?" Vivienne looked at the enslaved wolves. One of them had dark red fur and a torn left ear. Her brother Gideon. For the first time, Rosalie understood that Vivienne had not known he was among the missing. "He told me Gideon had deserted," she whispered. The red wolf threw himself against the magical command, his claws scraping helplessly across the floor. Vivienne's voice broke. "He turned my brother into that." Rosalie's anger did not disappear, but pain recognized pain. "Show Elias the passage," she said. Vivienne looked at her. "You trust me?" "No." Rosalie wiped blood from her mouth. "I trust what you are afraid of losing." Vivienne nodded once. Elias led soldiers and civilians toward the chapel entrance, while Rosalie and Damian held the center of the hall. One by one, people escaped through the hidden route. Silas allowed it. That frightened Rosalie more than if he had tried to stop them. "He wants us below," she said. Damian watched the chancellor disappear behind the mirror. "Then he needs something from us. Your blood. And yours." The mate bond tightened between them. Not desire this time. Warning. When the last servant entered the passage, Damian, Rosalie, and Elias followed. Vivienne remained behind long enough to reach for Gideon, but his black eyes fixed on her without recognition. "I will come back," she told him. The promise sounded like one she had never made to anyone before. The hidden stairway descended through the mountain beneath Blackridge. The walls narrowed until Damian's shoulders nearly brushed both sides. Ancient symbols glowed faintly in the stone, each one depicting wolves kneeling before a black throne. Rosalie touched one carving. A vision struck her. Hundreds of wolves with silver collars, a king raising one hand, an entire kingdom losing the ability to disobey. She pulled back. The throne was never a symbol. Damian looked at the carving. What was it? A weapon. They reached a landing where 3 tunnels divided. A wounded man lay against the wall. He wore the remains of a Blackridge guard uniform and a shattered silver collar around his neck. Rosalie recognized him as the first wolf she had freed. His name was Tomas. He caught Rosalie's hand. "The capital," he whispered. "The throne beneath the capital is waking." Damian crouched beside him. "How many prisoners?" "Hundreds. From every pack. Wolfless. Omegas. Betas who resisted commands." Tomas struggled to breathe. "Silas tested the collars here before sending them south." Rosalie felt sick. Blackridge had never been the center of the operation. It was a laboratory. "What does he need from us?" Damian asked. Tomas looked at Rosalie. "White wolf blood to break every wolf's will." Then he looked at Damian. "Royal blood to command what remains." The mountain shook. A gate opened at the end of the central tunnel. Silas's voice traveled through the darkness. "Come, Rosalie. The truth is waiting." Damian rose. Rosalie caught his arm. "If we go inside, he will use us. If we leave, he uses everyone he already has. He may force you to command them." Damian looked at her hand on his sleeve, then at her face. "If that happens, you stop me." The simplicity of it unsettled her. "You expect me to fight the Alpha King?" "I expect you not to let my crown become your cage." They entered the central tunnel. The chamber beyond was enormous. An ancient black structure rose from the center of the cavern. Not yet a full throne, but a smaller replica connected to thousands of glowing silver veins in the floor. Iron platforms surrounded it, each fitted with chains and blood channels. Silas stood before the structure. He was not alone. Dozens of royal officials watched from an upper gallery, their faces hidden beneath dark hoods. This conspiracy reached far beyond Blackridge. Silas spread his hands. Look at what uncontrolled power has created. Centuries of wars, alphas abusing weaker wolves, packs destroying one another over territory, bloodline, and mating claims. Rosalie looked at the restraints. You created more abuse to stop abuse. I created obedience. That is not peace. To the dead, the distinction means very little. Silas stepped closer. You know what alphas are capable of. You have scrubbed their floors, endured their hands, lowered your eyes while they mocked your body and called you worthless. Tell me honestly, Rosalie, if you possess the power to stop every alpha from harming another omega, would you truly refuse to use it? The question struck the darkest part of her. For 6 years, Rosalie had dreamed of making men like Garrick afraid. She had imagined Vivienne speechless. She had imagined a world where no servant had to calculate how softly to walk past a drunken warrior. Silas saw the hesitation. I can give you that world. Damian did not interrupt. He did not command Rosalie to reject the offer. He waited. That mattered more than she wanted it to. What is the price? She asked. Silas looked at Damian. His blood. Freely given or forcibly taken. Damian removed the royal seal from his finger. Then he held it out to Rosalie. Silas's smile widened. Rosalie stared at the black ring in Damian's palm. With this, Damian said, you hold temporary authority over every royal soldier in Blackridge. Silas's smile faded. Damian closed Rosalie's fingers around the seal. If you decide the throne should fall, destroy it. If you decide I should lose my crown, take it. But do not trade your freedom to a man who calls control mercy. The chamber went silent. Rosalie looked into his steel-gray eyes. He was giving her the authority he had once protected at her expense. Not asking for forgiveness, not demanding trust, giving her the power to judge him. Silas's voice hardened. A gesture. Nothing more. A silver mechanism clicked inside the wall. Rosalie heard it a fraction too late. A spear launched from the darkness. Damian moved before she did. He turned, dragged her against his chest, and took the silver blade through his side. The impact drove them both to the floor. Damian made no sound. His blood spread hot across Rosalie's hands. Silver veins raced outward from the wound beneath his skin. Ragnar roared inside the bond, then began to fade. Rosalie stared at Damian's face as its color drained away. He could have commanded her to run. He could have completed the mate claim and used the bond to force her obedience. Instead, he pressed the royal seal more firmly into her palm. Choose, he whispered. Then, the Alpha King collapsed at her feet. For one suspended second, Rosalie heard nothing except Damian's blood striking the black stone. Drop by drop, far too quickly. The silver spear had entered beneath his ribs and emerged through his back. Dark blood spread across his shirt, steaming where it touched the ancient runes in the floor. The poison was already climbing through his veins in thin metallic lines, dulling the amber fire in his eyes. Around them, the hooded officials in the gallery remained silent, watching, waiting to see whether the last white wolf would save the Alpha King or let the royal bloodline die at her feet. Silas looked almost pleased. There is your choice, he said. The man tied to your family's destruction or the future of every Omega who ever feared an Alpha. Rosalie dropped to her knees beside Damian. Her hands pressed against the wound, but blood forced its way between her fingers. Stay awake. Damian's breathing was shallow. That sounded dangerously close to an order. Then obey it. A faint, pained curve touched his mouth. Even dying, he found enough defiance to remain himself. Rosalie looked down at the royal seal in her palm. The black ring felt heavier than iron. With it, she could command Damian's soldiers. She could claim temporary authority over Blackridge. She could perhaps escape, but escape had been her answer for 6 years. Hide. Endure. Wait. Survive. Behind Silas, silver channels carried stolen magic deeper into the replica throne. Every pulse traveled south toward the capital, where hundreds of imprisoned wolves waited beneath a greater weapon. If Rosalie ran now, Damian would die. The prisoners would remain enslaved. Silas would simply continue searching for another way to awaken her blood. There was no safe path left. only the path she could live with after the danger ended. Rosalie tore the fabric around Damian's wound. "You know white wolf blood can counter silver," Silas said, "but healing him will bind your magic to the throne. I will be able to follow every drop of power you use." Rosalie raised her eyes to him. "Then follow me." She bit into her own palm. Silver-white blood welled against her skin. Silas's expression changed. Rosalie pressed her bleeding hand over Damian's wound. The reaction was immediate. White light burst beneath her fingers, colliding with the silver poison inside him. Damian arched from the floor, a raw sound tearing from his throat. Ragnar surged weakly through the bond, fighting for his life. Rosalie felt the poison enter her. It traveled from Damian's blood into hers, cold and sharp, splitting her concentration. She did not pull away. "Rosalie," Damian gasped. "I said stay awake. You should not have come back for me." Her eyes burned. "You still do not understand." He looked at her. "I did not come back because you are my king." Her voice shook, but not from uncertainty. "I came back because you gave me a choice." The light intensified. Silver poison spilled from Damian's wound in black smoke. His breathing deepened, though the injury did not fully close. The white wolf blood could keep him alive, but it could not erase the damage instantly. Rosalie lifted her hand. Damian caught her wrist. The strength in his grip was returning. "Silas can track you now." "I know." Then this was a trap. Rosalie looked toward the replica throne. "Yes." Understanding entered Damian's face, not fear. Approval. "You let him believe the trap was his." Rosalie stood, still clutching his cloak around her body. "For a king, you are unusually slow." Damian pushed himself upright with one hand braced against the floor. Pain tightened every line of his face. But he rose. Silas's patience vanished. "Take them." The hooded figures in the gallery threw back their robes. They were not merely officials. They were alphas from across the kingdom. Northern warlords, southern governors, pack leaders who had sworn loyalty to Damian in public while financing Silas in secret. Each wore a narrow silver band around one wrist, linking them to the throne. They shifted almost simultaneously. The chamber filled with snarls and breaking bone. A dozen massive wolves descended from the gallery. Damian reached for his sword, but Rosalie stopped him. "No, they are coming to kill us. They are also bound." She lifted the royal seal. "Commander Elias Kane," she called. The ring heated against her palm. Her voice traveled through the royal command network, woven into Blackridge's walls. From the tunnel behind them came the thunder of boots. Elias emerged with royal soldiers, freed prisoners, and several Blackridge servants armed with whatever they had found: axes, kitchen knives, iron bars, and broken spear shafts. Vivienne was among them. Blood streaked her crimson dress. Beside her walked Gideon in human form, weak but conscious, the shattered pieces of his collar still hanging around his neck. Elias looked at Damian bleeding beside the throne, then at Rosalie holding the royal seal. "I assume this is one of those situations where asking questions would waste valuable time." Rosalie pointed toward the silver channels. "Break every line carrying magic into the throne." Elias drew his sword. "That, I understand." The royal soldiers surged forward. The chamber erupted. Bound wolves collided with armored men. Sparks burst from silver restraints. Blackridge servants hacked at glowing channels while Elias held the central stair. Vivienne fought beside Gideon, striking down one of Silas's guards before he could close a gate. Rosalie moved toward the replica throne. Silas stepped into her path. "You cannot destroy it here." "Then why are you standing in front of it?" His calm expression returned, but the mask no longer fit as perfectly. "This is only an anchor. The true obsidian throne lies beneath the capital. By the time you reach it, the awakening will be complete." Damian joined Rosalie's side. He looked pale, one hand pressed to his wound, but his sword remained steady. "Then we finish this in the capital." Silas smiled. "You believe the kingdom will follow a wounded king and a servant?" Rosalie looked around the cavern. A former kitchen girl shattered a silver channel with a hammer. An Omega Rosalie had once seen whipped for speaking out, dragged a wounded soldier to safety. Vivienne shielded the brother she had thought lost. Commander Elias fought 3 wolves without killing any of them. "No," Rosalie said. "I think they are finished following men who call obedience peace." She raised her hand. Her voice gathered silver resonance. "Remember who you were before he named you useful." The words traveled through the chamber. Every bound Alpha froze. One wolf shifted back, collapsing to his knees. Then another, and another. The silver bands around their wrists cracked open. Silas turned toward the throne. Too late. Damian drove his sword into the replica's center. Black stone fractured. Rosalie's truth magic entered the crack. The structure exploded. A shockwave hurled everyone across the cavern. The glowing channels died. For a moment, complete darkness filled the chamber. Then the southern wall opened, not through machinery, through magic. A vast image appeared in the air, revealing the capital hundreds of miles away. The obsidian throne had awakened. It stood beneath the royal palace, larger than Rosalie had imagined, carved from black moonstone and surrounded by thousands of silver chains. Wolves knelt in concentric circles around it, their eyes empty. The image shifted. Silas's voice came from the throne itself, not from the man standing in Blackridge. The Silas before them smiled as his body began dissolving into smoke. A reflection, Damian said. Rosalie understood. Silas had never physically entered Blackridge. He had sent a magical projection while his true body remained in the capital. The reflection looked at her. "Come home, White Wolf." Then it vanished. 3 days later, the royal army reached the capital beneath a sky without stars. The journey should have taken a week, but Damian ordered fresh horses at every outpost. Freed wolves joined them along the road. So did servants, independent pack leaders, and families carrying names of people who had disappeared under Silas's system. By the time the towers of Veyrom appeared beyond the frozen plains, Damian's force was no longer only an army. It was a procession of witnesses. Rosalie rode beside him. She wore dark trousers, riding boots, and a fitted silver-gray coat provided by Commander Elias. The clothing was practical, warm, and cut to fit her full figure rather than conceal it. Her auburn hair moved freely beneath the winter wind. For years, Rosalie had made herself smaller. Now, thousands of people could see her. She was still afraid. The difference was that fear no longer controlled the direction she moved. Damian's wound had not healed completely. Each hour in the saddle drained color from his face, though he refused to admit the pain. Rosalie watched him shift slightly in the saddle. "You are bleeding again. I am touched by your concern. I am concerned you will fall off the horse and embarrass the crown. The crown has survived worse." Rosalie glanced at the black metal circlet fastened to his saddle. He had not worn it since placing it at Seraphine's feet. "Why did you bring it?" Damian looked toward the capital. "To end what it began." At the city gates, royal guards blocked the road. Their commander raised a trembling hand. "By order of Chancellor Vale, Alpha King Damian Voss has been declared compromised by forbidden magic. The White Wolf is to be surrendered." Thousands of people behind Rosalie went silent. Damian moved his horse forward. The commander's men lowered spears. Rosalie saw fear in their faces. Not loyalty to Silas. Fear of the collars hidden beneath their armor. She dismounted. Damian reached for her. "Rosalie," she looked up at him. "Judge me by what I do next," she reminded him. Then she walked toward the soldiers alone. The commander's spear shook. "Stop," Rosalie continued. "I said stop. You do not want to hurt me." His eyes widened. "You do not want to stand between your family and the truth." The silver resonance entered her voice. One soldier dropped his spear. Another began crying. The commander reached beneath his armor and tore away the collar around his throat. Blood followed it, but his eyes cleared. He knelt, not to Rosalie, to the families behind her. "Forgive us," he whispered. The gates opened. Veyrom had once seemed untouchable, a city of black towers, silver bridges, and royal banners. Now its streets were lined with frightened citizens. Windows remained closed. Shops had been abandoned. No bells rang from the palace. The throne's magic had taken hold. Every wolf in the city moved with unnatural stillness. Damian led the procession toward the royal palace without resistance. Silas wanted them inside. The palace doors stood open. Beyond them, black veins had spread across the marble floors like roots from a poisoned tree. The throne chamber lay beneath the building, accessible through a spiral stair once known only to the royal family. Damian stopped at the entrance. "Elias, secure the palace and evacuate anyone without a collar." Elias nodded. "And those with collars? Keep them alive. That has become an inconveniently consistent rule." Damian almost smiled. "You may complain after the kingdom survives." Vivienne remained with the army. She had chosen to testify publicly against Silas and her father, but Rosalie had not mistaken cooperation for redemption. Some debts required more than one brave decision. Only Rosalie and Damian descended into the throne chamber. At the bottom of the stairs, heat replaced the winter cold. The obsidian throne filled the cavern. Thousands of silver chains stretched from its base into tunnels beneath the city, carrying commands to every pack in the kingdom. Around it knelt hundreds of prisoners. Some were conscious, others had been reduced to living vessels. Silas sat on the throne. His silver hair was loose over his shoulders. Black runes had spread across his face. He no longer looked like a patient advisor. He looked like a man who had mistaken control for immortality. "You came," he said. Rosalie stepped forward. "You made certain I would." Silas looked at Damian, and the king came wounded. Predictable. Damian's hand rested on his sword. "You built your plan around people choosing power, because they always do." "No," Damian said. "You built it around your belief that everyone is as empty as you are." Silas placed one hand on the throne. Every prisoner lifted their head. Across the city, wolves howled. The sound rolled outward until the entire kingdom seemed to cry through the stone. "You call me cruel," Silas said. "But how many women like Rosalie suffered under Alpha law while your family celebrated? How many Omegas disappeared before you noticed? How many servants were beaten while kings debated honor?" Damian did not defend himself. "Too many." Silas's eyes narrowed. "I am not asking history to forgive me," Damian continued. "I am ending the system that allowed me not to see them." Rosalie looked at him. It would have been easy for Damian to blame his father, Silas, or stolen memories. Instead, he accepted responsibility for what he had failed to question. The truth did not erase her anger, but it made room beside it for something else. "Respect." Silas looked at Rosalie. "You hear his remorse and call it growth. I hear a king afraid of losing his mate." "I have not chosen the bond," Rosalie said. Damian did not react. Silas smiled. "Then let us remove choice from the equation." The throne awakened. Black light struck Damian. He dropped to one knee. His sword hit the floor. Rosalie moved toward him, but silver chains erupted from the throne and wrapped around her wrists. Damian's eyes turned black. Ragnar roared through the chamber. Trapped beneath Silas's command, the Alpha King rose slowly. He retrieved his sword. Then he faced Rosalie. Silas leaned back against the throne. "Kill her!" Damian's body moved. One step, then another. Every muscle in his face strained against the command. Rosalie pulled at the chains, but the white wolf blood within them made them stronger each time she resisted. Damian lifted the sword. His hand trembled. "Fight him," Rosalie said. "I am." His voice barely escaped. Silas increased the command. Damian's blade came closer. Rosalie could feel his terror through the mate bond. Not fear of death, fear of becoming the weapon that killed her. She stopped pulling against the chains. "Damian," his black eyes fixed on hers. "You were 12 years old when you tried to save me." The sword halted. Silas's fingers tightened around the throne. "You ran into the fire when every adult around you chose obedience." Damian shook violently. "You reached beneath the floor." A memory moved between them. The frightened boy, the burning beams, his scarred hand reaching through smoke. "Take my hand," Rosalie whispered. The blade lowered an inch. Silas shouted, "Kill her!" Damian lunged. Rosalie closed her eyes. Steel struck stone. She opened them. Damian had driven the sword into the floor beside her. His hands wrapped around the silver chains. The metal burned through his skin. He tore them apart. Rosalie fell forward. Damian caught her. For one breath, they held each other in the black light of the throne. Then Silas sent a wave of power through the chamber. Damian was thrown against the steps. Rosalie struck the floor. Silas stood. "You cannot defeat a throne sustained by royal authority." Damian looked toward the crown hanging from his belt. Understanding entered his face. Rosalie saw it too. The obsidian throne did not draw power only from blood. It drew power from the idea that one royal line possessed the unquestionable right to command every other wolf. As long as Damian remained absolute king, the throne remained connected to him. He removed the crown. Silas's expression changed. "No." Damian rose slowly. Blood ran from his palms and side. "You told me the crown preserves order," he said. "My father believed you." He looked at the prisoners surrounding the throne. "Look what our order required." Silas descended one step. "If you break it, every pack may challenge the throne. the kingdom will fracture. Then we will build something stronger than fear. You will lose your authority. Yes, your alpha power may die with it. Damian looked at Rosalie. She could feel Ragnar inside him, wounded but present. Silas's voice became sharper. She will never choose a powerless man. Damian's gaze remained on Rosalie. Then she will be free to choose without a crown forcing her hand. He lifted the black circlet. Rosalie's heart tightened. This was no performance. No audience stood ready to praise him. No guarantee waited beyond the sacrifice. He might lose his wolf, his throne, his life. Damian struck the crown against the obsidian throne. The metal cracked. Silas screamed. Damian struck it again. The crown shattered. The effect tore through the kingdom. The throne split from top to bottom. Every chain went slack. Damian collapsed. Ragnar's presence vanished from the bond. Rosalie screamed his name. Silas staggered back as the black runes burned away from his skin. "No," he whispered. "The throne is mine." Rosalie rose. Silver light gathered around her body. You never understood it. Her bones shifted. Seraphine emerged, vast and radiant, filling the cavern with white fire. Silas reached for the broken throne. Black magic poured into him, distorting his body, sharpening his hands into claws and hollowing his eyes into darkness. He attacked. Seraphine met him at the foot of the throne. The impact cracked the cavern walls. Silas's claws tore through white fur. Seraphine's jaws closed around his shoulder and hurled him across the chamber. He rose again, feeding on the last power trapped in the throne. Rosalie understood that strength alone would not defeat him. Silas had built his entire life on stolen silence. So she gave the dead their voices back. Seraphine lifted her head and released a howl. It was not a cry of dominance. It was truth. The sound moved through the throne, the chains, and every drop of blood beneath the palace. The cavern filled with voices, mothers searching for missing son, servants naming the alphas who had beaten them, prisoners remembering the rooms where they had been held. Rosalie's mother speaking from the night Moonveil burned. You cannot build peace from stolen will. The memories struck Silas from every direction. He fell to his knees. No. The prisoners opened their eyes. The bound alphas across the kingdom regained control. Silver collars broke in distant packs. Silas covered his ears, but the voices came from inside him now. Every life he had reduced to a number. Every pain he had justified as necessary. Every truth he had buried beneath the word order. Seraphine shifted back. Rosalie stood before him, exhausted, bleeding, and wrapped in silver light. Silas looked up at her. "Kill me." His voice was almost eager. One final act of violence would allow him to prove they were the same. Rosalie picked up Damian's sword. Silas smil. She placed the blade against his throat, then lowered it. No. His smile vanished. You murdered my family. Yes. You stole lives and called it peace. Yes. You made people believe pain was the price of safety. His eyes burned with hatred. Then take your revenge. Rosalie looked toward the prisoners awakening around them. Death would let you escape the truth. She called for the royal guard. Elias entered with soldiers at his back. Rosalie pointed to Silas. Chain him without magic. He will stand trial before every family he harmed. Silas laughed bitterly. You think a trial will heal them? No. Rosalie looked at him with absolute calm. But they deserve to speak while you are forced to listen. Elias dragged Silas away. Rosalie dropped the sword and ran to Damian. He lay near the shattered crown, motionless. She pressed her hand against his chest. No heartbeat. Damian. Nothing. The mate bond felt empty. She closed her eyes and searched for Ragnar. Only darkness answered. Grief hit her with shocking force. She had spent so long refusing to trust Damian that she had not understood how much space he had already taken inside her. Not because fate had demanded it, because he had listened when she challenged him, because he had stepped aside when she demanded equality, because he had broken his crown rather than make her kneel. Rosalie placed both hands over his heart. You do not get to give me a choice and die before I make it. Her white wolf blood glowed beneath her palms. Nothing happened. The throne had drained too much from her. She bent over him, tears falling onto his face. I choose you. The words were quiet, human, free. I choose the rough, impossible man who took too long to understand that protection without consent is another cage. I choose the boy who reached through the fire. I choose the man who broke his crown. She pressed her forehead to his. but I do not choose your death." A faint pulse moved beneath her hand. Rosalie froze. Then another. Damian inhaled sharply. His eyes opened. They were no longer glowing with overwhelming alpha power. They were simply steel gray, alive. Rosalie laughed and cried at once. Damian's voice was weak. "That was a very long speech." She hit his shoulder. He winced. "You were dead. Briefly. You are unbearable." His hand rose to her face. "Did you mean it?" Rosalie covered his hand with hers. "Do not ruin the moment." A quiet warmth moved through the bond. Then, deep inside Damian, Ragnar opened his eyes. The Black Wolf was weaker, but he had survived. 6 months later, Blackridge Keep no longer housed servants in frozen stone rooms. The dungeons had been opened. The silver restraints melted down, and the lower halls rebuilt into archives where survivors could record what had happened to them. Silas Vale stood trial for 42 days. Rosalie attended every session. So did Damian. They listened while Omegas, servants, soldiers, and grieving families spoke. Some demanded imprisonment, others demanded death. A new council, not Damian alone, issued the final judgment. Silas would spend the remainder of his life without title, magic, or private confinement, working under guard to restore the records he had destroyed, and hearing each new testimony entered against him. Alpha Garrick was stripped of rank and imprisoned. Vivienne surrendered her claim to Blackridge and testified against every noble she had helped Silas contact. Rosalie did not forgive her, but she supported a lawful trial rather than private revenge. Damian publicly revealed the crimes of House Voss. He abolished forced shifting, hereditary ownership of Omega labor, and the classification of wolfless people as lesser citizens. Alpha commands became illegal in courts, employment, mating decisions, and criminal investigations. The royal throne was replaced by a moon council composed of alphas, betas, omegas, former servants, independent pack leaders, and representatives chosen by ordinary citizens. Damian remained the kingdom's leader, but never again its unquestionable master. On the first night of spring, he found Rosalie in the rebuilt Blackridge courtyard, the same place where she had once stood with her head lowered beneath Vivienne's cruelty. Rosalie now wore a deep silver-blue gown that moved naturally over her beautiful, full figure. Her dark auburn hair fell in soft waves over her shoulders. Warm torchlight touched her round, radiant face, and for once she wore no ash, smoke, or herbs to hide her scent. Damian approached in a black formal coat, though his collar was open and the scar along his jaw remained visible. Even without the crushing force of his former dominance, he still carried the dangerous, rough-edged presence of a man no sensible enemy would underestimate. He stopped beside her, not in front of her. The courtyard was filled with former servants, freed prisoners, soldiers, and families from across the kingdom. A new ceremonial platform stood before them. 2 seats, equal height. Damian looked at Rosalie. "There is still time to refuse." She raised an eyebrow. "Is the Alpha King nervous?" "The Alpha King no longer possesses the power to silence anyone who notices. That may be the healthiest development in this kingdom." He held out his hand. Rosalie looked at it. Once, a frightened boy had reached through fire and begged her to take it. Once, a wounded king had placed his authority in her palm and told her to choose. Now there was no smoke, no command, no hidden chain inside the gesture, only a man waiting for her answer. Rosalie placed her hand in his. Seraphine appeared beneath the rising moon, enormous and luminous at the edge of the courtyard. Ragnar joined her, a massive black wolf with a silver scar across his chest. No aura forced the gathering to kneel. No royal command demanded obedience. The people bowed because they chose respect. Rosalie looked at Damian. "My wolf recognized you before I trusted you. I remember, but I choose you now because you finally learned something fate could never teach you." "What is that?" "That love is not possession." Damian lifted her hand and pressed his lips to her knuckles. "And power is not proof that a man deserves to lead." Together, they stepped onto the platform. Rosalie did not become queen because her blood was rare. She did not rule because she was Damian's mate. She stood beside him because she had survived the system, exposed its lies, and helped build something more human in its place. Her first decree created safe houses in every territory for wolves escaping forced bonds, abusive pacts, and exploitative labor. Her second returned stolen Moonvale lands to the surviving families who had worked them. Her third declared that no person, alpha, king, or mate, could claim another life without consent. The woman who had spent 6 years making herself invisible had become impossible to ignore. Rosalie's journey leaves us with a truth that reaches far beyond fantasy. Sometimes hiding helps a person survive, but survival is not the same as freedom. Real love does not ask someone to become smaller, stay silent, or forgive before they are ready. It creates room for honesty, accountability, and choice. Damian could not change the crimes committed by his family, but he could choose whether to protect the system that benefited him or help dismantle it. And Rosalie proved that reclaiming power does not require becoming as cruel as the people who once abused it. Would you have trusted Damian after he hesitated during the moon mirror ritual? Or would that moment have ended the bond forever? Did breaking his crown prove that he deserved a second chance? Or should Rosalie have made him earn her trust for much longer? Share your honest answer in the comments. And subscribe to Royal Mate Tales for more stories about forgotten women reclaiming their strength, hidden mates challenging powerful kings, and love that must be earned rather than demanded.